Good afternoon, everyone. This is Arrian Mehis, Director for International Technical Services here in Rackspace International. Once again, thank you for joining us today. The topic will be Strategize for Spike, in which we will get into greater detail about how Rackspace has helped our customers prepare, plan, and strategize for e-commerce or really just spiky workload and traffic in our environments. So once again, thanks for joining us. A bit about myself. I've been at Rackspace nearly 3 years, in the IT industry almost 20. I've worn quite a few hats with mostly at Dell Pro prior to joining Rackspace. And again, I lead the technical services team here in International, which our purpose in life is to really help customers adopt a managed services and cloud portfolio here at Rackspace. And then, of course, a bit about Rackspace itself. For those that may not know, we're nearly 6,000 Rackers, we call ourselves, well over 200,000 customers, and a truly global footprint. We have presence in the U.S., Hong Kong, Australia, and in Europe as well, and that spans the course of 9 data centers. So we also have a portfolio of solutions that span from dedicated, cloud, and hybrid, and I'll touch a bit on that in a moment. And our overall motto or our mission at Rackspace is to be the service leader. So we sell service, not servers, if you will. A bit of irony in that, but we want to be the world's greatest service leader in how we deliver and differentiate ourselves from the other service providers that are out there today. Very well. So let's get into the detail on how we help customers plan for spikes, and a lot of that's through today's day and age technology of automation, orchestration, provisioning, and the ability to do that all over again repeatedly within the Rackspace environment. So when I think about a lot of the problems and challenges that with all the CIOs and CTOs and just generally infrastructure managers that we speak with, it seems to resonates a lot of the same of having to or wanting to reduce delivery time to business users, which means having to innovate faster and eliminating the need for shadow IT. So shadow IT, it can be a blessing and a curse, but mostly a curse for the infrastructure managers, as it means you lose span of control. But what your end users get out of that by going to a cloud service provider such as a Rackspace is you get the speed and agility. But there's also security concerns with doing that. Equally, all CIOs want to lower internal cost and complexity. So the overall cost to deliver the services to its end users, how to maintain more time innovating versus operating, and then spending less time doing such as patchwork, upgrades, etc. That's usually not the best use of a company's investment. And then lastly, avoid vendor lock-in. So there are some large software providers out there today that built an entire business model around locking customers into their software and their licensing. But ultimately, if IT service providers can help our customers avoid that, the ability to move workloads around on a common platform, it will be beneficial to both the provider as well as its customers as well. But yet, the overall vision for the service provider, at least as it was before, is it's kind of, being the IT guys, it's one of those things that's expected, and it's not really a problem until something breaks. It's perceived as kind of a blocker in the business, and just really maintaining all the legacy systems that are out there. It's not a very glamorous business unit, if you will, but it needs to be. It needs to be an enabler. It needs to be able to, drive business to be instead of being a cost center, if you will, that helps to innovate and enables the business. So a business enabler. So by leveraging existing cloud service providers such as Rackspace, you can do this and integrate at massive scale. which is where we come in. So a lot of the mundane components to maintaining an IT environment, Rackspace can do that at scale, which in turn will allow the business to become more innovative and do new things that actually drive a lot of upside and revenue for that business. Moving forward, so you think about an IT transformation, and this is kind of a nice slide and a trajectory of where, kind of over the past couple decades of IT is gradually moving towards. Think about in-house hosting. It was the traditional model. Everybody had a data center. Everybody had servers and storage. But then came the concept of virtualization, which virtualization has done wonders to maximize consolidate servers via software. It is a technology. It's not necessarily cloud, but what it has done is the ability to consolidate and do more with less. From a physical and virtual perspective, all within that data center. Rackspace is a massive fan, we deliver managed virtualization as well, so it's certainly a product within our portfolio. But ultimately, what you want to do again is consider making that fundamental shift to the operational efficiency that I described earlier, where cloud service providers can do this at much greater scale than any company can at the individual level. Ultimately, the ability to automate and repeat, and then finally, the ability to federate across different cloud platforms, across different data centers. So actually managing and moving workloads across various different data centers. We're not quite there yet. We're getting there. OpenStack is showing a lot of potential to be able to connect different workloads and leverage a public cloud in, say, London against your dedicated environment, say, in China. So it's really coming a long way and be able to be the vehicle and the means to make that a reality. Speaking of reality, the challenges of traditional capacity planning is hopefully kind of going to the wayside. As you can see, traditional capacity planning with the green line is a bit of a stair-step approach, as it has been historically, whether that's biannually or annually, that every year when it comes time to do budget planning, you have to submit how much you think you're going to consume for the next 12 months. And it's a bit of a painful task. So normally what one might do is do an analysis of last year's consumption, a little bit of adjustment and expectations on growth or decelerated growth, and then submit that. But the reality is most of the time you're either over capacity or under capacity, which means, of course, you never want to be under capacity. But if you're over capacity, of course, there's a lot of waste in there. So with the introduction of cloud and on-demand computing against demand, you can see with the blue and yellow, it's purple and yellow lines, you have almost a one-to-one correlation, one-to-one relationship with supply and demand, really minimizing any waste or any overhead, which is kind of neat to think about that in terms of a operational expenditure consumption model. But the reality is that when considering cloud, the considerations to migrate or move or build an application in the cloud seem to follow kind of a familiar pattern. You've got risk, what is the company's appetite to place this workload or application and even data outside of the four walls of their own data center that they've been consuming from for years, if not decades. What about the process and governance around that application? What about data sovereignty? What about the people that have been users of the workload and application? Is it going to be transparent to them? What about the technical concerns, that is latency, adopting the cloud service provider, the governance, the IT service management that cloud service provider provides to its end users, and ultimately the financial implications. So spending a little more time on financial implications, cloud, at least the illusion of, is not always cheaper. And we've got a couple cases there, at least customers that have overcommitted or overcorrected to cloud a couple years ago and then came back to Rackspace because of the hybrid model that we allow our customers. When I mean cloud, I mean a pure cloud environment, meaning that it's every product within that particular cloud service provider's portfolio is multi-tenant. Whereas at Rackspace we have the hybrid model, which is a bit different, and I'll explain that a bit more in greater detail. Equally, in kind of spending some more time on the technical aspects, it's important to really spot demand patterns and what I call kind of cloud economics, and making sure that you choose the appropriate consumption model. So to my earlier point on cloud not always being cheaper, it depends, right? And it's a bit of a wide answer that I'm sure all of us can joke about, but it really does depend on the workload. So if you have flat, consistent workloads, cloud isn't always the best. If you have spiky, maybe inconsistent, unpredictable workloads, cloud is an excellent fit. So you really are what we call, owning the base and renting the spike. It's very similar to if you have, say, you need a car for a year, you're likely going to buy that car, or a few years. If you need a car for 6 months, you might lease a car for the 6-month duration. If you need a car for just a few hours, you're going to take a taxi or perhaps rent. So there's different cost values to each model that you want to do. If you took a taxi for a year, that would be cost prohibitive to kind of show you an end-to-end spectrum of that. So once again, it's important to know your workloads and be able to build your architecture within the cloud or hybrid model to be able to respond seamlessly to those workloads. And again, maximize your dollar that you invest. So here's an example, without getting into the actual customer name themselves, but they are a travel and entertainment provider. So they produce packages and holiday packages for customers. They get some 7 million package creations per day. So it's got a very high workload. As you can see, what they traditionally did is build for the high watermark, and you see kind of the shade of gray where they built enough infrastructure and paid for enough infrastructure to handle the traffic that they're used to up to the high watermarks of, let's say, February and then August/September, and then they added a 15% contingency to it. So all of that is overspent. But that's the only model that they knew before Rackspace. So going to the next iteration of that, one could easily say, well, I only need cloud servers for our peak seasons. And again, this is travel. So you think about kind of the January through March is a lot of holiday people coming off of Christmas and wanting to go on holidays with their family. And then, of course, once again in summer, during July through end of September, one would say, well, I only need cloud servers 2 times a year during those 2 peaks. But the reality is, so that came out, those 2 peaks added up to be around 8,760 hours of peak that they thought they needed. So even if by reducing the high watermark, if you will, reducing some spend, they realized that there are microeconomies within each day. So if they looked at every day within the two peaks that you see, and then you can see the little breakout, it's actually much less than they thought. And it wound up being almost 1/10 less than what they thought. So they only needed 720 hours of cloud as opposed to the 8,760. So once again, there's even different perspectives and vantage points to looking at your workload consumption. So do you look at it at kind of the macro annual scale? Is it periodic enough where you can look at it at even the daily level? So this company, we were able to help them save quite a bit of money within our environment by adopting a hybrid model and really using cloud only when they need it. So what is hybrid cloud? I've been speaking quite a bit about that thus so far, but want to spend some time making sure that everyone is clear on what we mean by that at Rackspace. So first off, what is cloud? And I'll be the first to admit that every customer I speak with has a wide interpretation of what that means. It can mean anything from getting workloads outside of their data center. Customers want to be out of the data center business completely and give all the workloads to Rackspace. It might mean I have one application I want to put into a multi-tenant environment for pennies per hour. So it's important to remember that there's different, it's very subjective, and there are different interpretations of cloud. So it's always important to make sure that when speaking to cloud service providers that you're clear on what they mean by cloud and what you might expect by cloud. So getting into kind of the standards definition, this is backed by the NIST, or the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's really, cloud is a method of computing delivered by an external provider as a service. And more often than not, it's from a shared pool of resources, hence the entire business model or concept of cloud. So the sixth standard kind of tenet, if you will, is the infinite processing and storage with broad network service. So what that effectively means is that you have at least the perception of a limitless pool of supply, right? So it's limitless capacity. You'll never have to, you as the consumer will never have to worry about more capacity. That's our job to worry about that. Abstracted or virtualized pooled resources. So again, back to the entire concept of the shared model of cloud. The elasticity, the ability to spin up or spin down, kind of the world of the on-demand or instant self-service that we live in, mostly driven by our consumers. We're never going to be able to put that genie back in the bottle. Highly automated. The tools, features, et cetera, that to allow as little touch as possible. So say from your iPhone, if you want to spin up a Rackspace server, or from your Android, you can do that within minutes if you wanted to, as long as you had network access. And then finally, consumption-based billing, where you only pay what I call by the drink. So if you use 10 cloud servers for 10 hours, you pay for only that amount. And that's important to know when you're entertaining different types of cloud service providers, because they have different billing models, they have different interpretations of cloud and what that means. So make sure you understand the different variations of that. And of course, how those categories of service are delivered. Is it an infrastructure provider such as Rackspace? Is it something that does somewhat niche, such as Windows Azure, that's a PaaS platform? Or is it something that's a SaaS platform that majority of us have used more often than not in our lives with SaaS, such as HR and billing, et cetera. So there's different levels of control or spend control that it can and will allow consumers depending on what that product might mean. So if you want to build your own and have a bit more control, infrastructure service such as Rackspace, we will stop at certain levels within the operating system or the application, and the rest is for you to consume, but we'll own and maintain all the hardware and functionality, data center operations, et cetera, that connectivity that go into that. The reality is, though, is that we're still in a bit of transition with cloud. Cloud is kind of on the left side there. It's kind of the leading edge, or the 2.5%, maybe the 13% of early adopters. But the reality is it's not widespread. You have some kind of new age companies, very tech savvy, that are familiar with cloud, that have committed all the way to cloud. You have other kind of legacy enterprises that we've worked with that have been in business for 20 to 50 years, and they're not ready for cloud at all. So it's also important to understand where you are in kind of the IT maturity scale. And the reality is that cloud is a bit daunting to a lot. So the concept, once again, of hybrid goes a long way with our enterprises, because they can still have the control and security of a dedicated environment, but also have the convenience when they want and security with a cloud environment, all within the Rackspace data center. So what that means, again, is it's multiple environments, consumption environments, such as a public cloud, which is such as a single-tenant private cloud, such as single-tenant dedicated IT, all working together as one environment. And again, the ability to have all three goes a long way with a lot of our enterprise customers. Or the ability to have just pure cloud goes a long way with our pure cloud customers, obviously. So you think about, and it's kind of what I call a cross-section of hybrid cloud, public cloud, et cetera. So you can see the advantages and disadvantages of both. Obviously, public cloud There are the traditional concerns of security, performance being on a shared environment, reliability because it's a pooled model. But you do realize the benefits at the per unit cost, utility building, and of course the speed to provision and automate, and just have servers and capacity at your fingertips within minutes. Of course, the flip side of that is exactly the opposite. On kind of going to the other side of the guardrail with dedicated, which is maximizing security, maximizing your performance on bare metal or dedicated kit, and then of course having the reliability of the tier 1 servers and storage and network providers that we all are familiar with and have been for decades now. But then of course the alternative to that is, once again, using my taxi versus buying a car model is obviously you're going to pay, it's a more capital outlay up front. Utility billing, you are consuming it for a longer duration. And of course the speed to provision dedicated kit versus something virtual in the cloud is a bit different as well. So once again, knowing your workload, you'll be able to swiftly determine, kind of on these three tenets on what is the best benefit for you and your particular application or applications that go into that. So getting a bit technical, a hybrid application architecture at Rackspace, say for the e-commerce provider that I shared with earlier, might look something like this, where you've got traditional dedicated servers, you might have some dedicated storage with some managed backup, etc. But in the blue section to the lower right, with the ability to rack connect into a cloud world, that's actually one cohesive environment. It's seamless and transparent to your end user when they're logging into your website. So if you need more servers, again, you've got your base there in the black, the yellow. And then when you do need to burst, you simply just burst into more servers. You burst into cloud files with limitless storage that attaches to CDN. So these types of products and solutions go a long way with a lot of our e-commerce customers, the ability to have kind of the best of both worlds, really, with having dedicated as well as cloud. All right, so let's get into a couple deeper or example customer use cases. Last time I presented this was just before Christmas. So obviously that resonated with a lot of our e-commerce customers that were trying to prepare for spikes, and this was in the October timeframe. But at the time we were sharing some of the facts around, or the statistics that we got regarding just how many consumers are out there today, just how many plan to buy, and what to expect around that. So, off the cuff, one might think that things ramp up in the November timeframe, and they certainly do. But of course, back to my earlier slides on the workloads, the majority is probably on the weekends or perhaps around lunchtime during the day, during the business week, definitely in the evenings during the business week. But just kind of the things that you need to prepare for throughout the course of, depending on what it is that you're offering, as a product. So one of our customers was just one of those. It's called Not on the High Street, and they sell kind of custom or bespoke, handcrafted items that you can't buy at traditional big shopping malls or big stores, big box stores. And they're a massive fan of hybrid cloud at Rackspace. So very similar going to Christmas, they're looking at 40 to 50 million page views per month on the run-up to Christmas, and that's in 3 months' time. So, thinking about preparing for that spike, you can say the majority of their workload was in, the final 3 months of the year. So what they might do is, build for a base that is really probably in the January, February timeframe, and then they really only need the additional cloud capacity the last 3 months, in which they can easily ramp and spike that. That's absolutely seamless to their end users. So that's a great example of a cyclical, say almost predictive watermark. There might be some spikes up around, say, Mother's Day or particular maybe Valentine's Day, etc. But the bulk of it is going to be on the later quarter of the year, and that's something that's cyclical and somewhat predictive. But again, nothing that they need to overspend on for any reason. Another customer of ours, quite a favorite, Domino's in the UK. So what they do is, again, it's cyclical, but it's a much more micro but repeatable use case on the weekly level. So they have their 2 for Tuesday kind of coupons or discounts every Tuesday, and what they used to do is every Tuesday around 4 o'clock, they would their admin would go spin up a bunch of virtualized VMs manually using VMware, which is kind of what I call boxing in the environment. So they'd set for the high watermark, and then at midnight they'd manually spin them all down. And that became even itself a bit cumbersome for that individual, and it wasn't that pioneering. So after having a workshop with them, an advisory workshop, and helping them to adopt our APIs, et cetera, they actually were able to automate that quite a bit. So again, it's a very consistent workload, and then of course they have their weekends as well. So think about Tuesday, Friday, and Saturdays when they consume, they have most of their orders. So now all of their cloud server spin up and spin down is all heavily automated. So when a user comes into their main website, the first page, they will go towards the right there on the Rackspace cloud to building their pizza, and you see it kind of go through the steps. Once they go to pay and purchase that pizza, purchase that order, that session then shifts over to a dedicated environment where it's more secure. So you have concerns like PCI, credit card information, PII, which is personally identifiable information. All that is nice and secure on a dedicated cloud, whereas the kind of the front end or the web front end servers sit on the public cloud. So that's a very nice balance that seems to work quite well for Domino's. And then another one is Creative Beans. So what they do is they build marketing campaigns, and in this case, there's a boy band I'm immediately not familiar with, but called One Direction. They've launched a new perfume. So using Facebook with an estimated fan base of around 50 million worldwide, which includes around 13 million Twitter fans, thousands on dedicated websites. This is kind of a traditional burst environment. They had an estimate, but really the reality is they had no idea. It could have completely broken their architecture. They might have had a fraction of that. So it's similar to the Super Bowl in the U.S., where obviously that's become a massive revenue generator for ad space. And when marketing agencies and engines elect to advertise during that time, they're really advertising to the world, but they don't know how much or how little traction they're going to get. So that's a good example of a burst where you almost need real-time spinning of servers as that peak. So there's a very similar case with Creative Beans when they launched this perfume for One Direction. And obviously there's loads and loads and loads of use cases out there, but I wanted to keep it to 3 in the purpose of time. So next steps in kind of wrapping this all up, and I'll save a bit of room for Q&A, but really want to kind of start walking through best practices, how Rackspace can help, and any questions you might have with regards to today's session and preparing for spikes. So, really, lesson number 1 is learn from the experts and innovate. So there's obviously a lot of companies out there today that I just enjoy seeing consume and what I call kind of cause disruption. So think about like Khan Academy, CERN, and what they're doing in Switzerland and France with regards to the ability. They just signed with Rackspace mid last year to federate with our public cloud in London, and all of this using OpenStack. So when they're doing computational analysis on nuclear physics, obviously the concept of having to run millions or thousands and thousands of servers within their data center becomes a bit overwhelming and almost prohibitive. So they really need the span of other cloud service providers out there, the ability to connect and federate with those data centers. So they have adopted OpenStack, and they're actually contributing code, and we're working with them to make that a reality. And then finally, Uber Transportation, which is another good one. So, once again, think about how they were able to disrupt and leverage technology to cause disruption in the workplace. In the consumer space. And then, of course, there are, equally as much as I like talking about the ones that have caused disruption, you've got to pay respect to those that really failed to innovate and didn't change and evolve with technology. So I think a lot of these logos should resonate. What used to be powerhouses in kind of the traditional office space or store space 10, 15 years ago aren't really around anymore. So it's, the reality is it's quite alarming if you don't embrace technology, if you are a laggard, kind of related to that curve I showed you earlier, because you'll certainly get surpassed if you don't embrace technology as the aforementioned companies have. So in summary, Rackspace, we're certainly here to help. And one thing I need to remember that cloud adoption, for some can be a journey, and that's okay. It depends on where you are in IT maturity. If you're starting, the next Facebook, and you're starting new, cloud adoption is much easier because you don't have legacy applications to worry about how to port, how to refactor, how to recode. So even if you do, hybrid is a conservative start. So you don't have to go kind of all in to a cloud environment if you still need the ability to have hybrid, to have dedicated, to have a private cloud before consuming public cloud. Use cloud like a utility. So turn it on when you're using it, turn it off when you don't need it anymore. Take the time to have a deep understanding of your application data application and data requirements. Be that may risk, the process, people technical, the financial aspects. The more you know about your workload, the easier consuming a cloud service provider model will be. If you are to kind of redevelop, make sure you develop loosely coupled applications when possible when embracing the cloud. So if you have again, that kind of goes back to the technical challenges or concerns that you want to consider. If you have a monolithic legacy application, you want to just kind of throw it in the cloud, it's likely not going to succeed. But if you're going to either start new or recode, do your best to break down and modularize that application as much as possible. And then also embracing the API. So if you're not using the API, you're not really creating a cloud-aware application. It's just really still servers or an IP address at the end of the day. If you're not using all the rich automation features, messaging, monitoring, et cetera, that go into a robust cloud environment. Equally, leverage the open source software tools that exist today. There's loads of them out there that help embrace and make the world of provisioning, making it repeatable, making it modular, et cetera, such as Chef, such as Puppet, all the monitoring tools that go out there, such as Loggly, et cetera. So there are plenty out there that we can spend more time on, perhaps in another session about the DevOps world itself. But the concept of the automation that goes in between the line of developers world and operations world, obviously it's a portman too, but the tools really help to make that as seamless as possible. And then finally, consult the experts and be disruptive in the market. And let us know here at Rackspace. We're more than happy to help have these conversations with you further. We've done it thousands, if not millions of times before for our customer set, and have learned quite a bit since then on helping them arrive to a managed services and hybrid computing model. Any questions? All right, if there are no questions, then I'll assume that the webinar was that understandable. Once again, here's one. Question is, I'm not sure of the traffic my site will generate. How can I estimate the number of concurrent users? So there's multiple tools that are out in the industry today. Kind of what we do at Rackspace, we either log into the load balancing mechanism and get an understanding of what that might look like, and then of course any anticipated growth. So a bit of it is best guesswork. If you're not using any kind of measurement tools on your website today, which would likely be of benefit, I would recommend using those types of tools to monitor traffic. Any other questions? So another question. Regarding Domino's, I'd mentioned the payment screen was separate from the building of the pizza. How are you able to redirect to 2 different servers within the same site? Certainly, Mark. So the F5 load balancer itself has that feature, so it can hold on to or create sticky sessions. But equally, that's kind of the secret sauce of Rack Connect, which is the ability to have virtual load balancing pools. So the appliance itself will manage those servers, and to the end user, to the traffic, it doesn't know if it's a physical server or if it's a cloud server. So but also within that, you can segment different load balancing pools. So you might have a pool for just your web front-end servers. You might have a pool for just your payment servers. But that traffic is all maintained and it's sticky within that session and within that appliance. Absolutely. So there's another question. Rajiv, could you reflect a bit on the pricing model? I mean, on-demand, reserve, and the continuous price correction with time. So I think I'll do my best, Rajiv, and feel free to type more on think about how to respond to this specifically. But when I refer to hybrid, in kind of those, remember the slides with the 3 tenets of having public, which is a utility-based consumption model that can be priced hourly, to kind of the other side of that, where at Rackspace we build a dedicated or private cloud for you, which means we're racking physical servers in a single tenant environment for you and only you. So it's kind of the 2 different sides of the cost or the pricing model scale. Whereas public cloud, all of the hardware is already sitting there. It's already turned on. It's a massive high dense or medium density environment that we've pre-built, if you will. And within that, when you spin up a cloud server, you're really just spinning up a VM. You're spinning up a database. You're spinning up some storage capacity. You're spinning up a virtual network. So really, you're flipping kind of from the physical to an entire cloud ecosystem that's shared with others, powered by software, our own software, if that makes sense. So within that, it's 2 different pricing models that you can turn on cloud, turn off. It's already running, so that's why we can charge pennies per hour versus something that's a little more dedicated, if you will, to that application on the private cloud or the dedicated side, where it means that you're paying for your own hardware. So I hope that demystifies that a bit on the pricing perspective. Any more questions? All right. Well, if there are no more questions, once again, on behalf of Rackspace, wanted to thank you for joining us today. Good collaboration towards the end, and I hope you feel a bit more comfortable, a bit more knowledgeable about at least how to plan for spikes, how to leverage the Rackspace hybrid cloud computing model to deliver on those e-commerce or web world platforms. If there's any other questions you might have following this session, do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you so much.